A man bought a .357 snub off me for his nightstand, and I asked him one question before he walked out. Have you ever fired it indoors? He looked at me like I had asked him something stupid. No, of course not. Nobody has. And that is the whole problem. And I want you to sit with it for a second before we go anywhere else. Every single thing you believe about how this cartridge behaves, you learned outdoors, on a range, in daylight, with muffs on your head and plugs in your ears and a bench in front of you and nothing at stake, and you bought it for a hallway. At 2 in the morning, with no ears, where your kids are asleep on the other side of a wall. Those are not the same cartridge. They behave nothing alike. And the gap between them is bigger than anything you will find on a ballistics chart. So today, I am going to tell you 8 things about the .357 Magnum that nobody selling you one is going to mention. This is not a hit piece. I own 3 of them. I carry one. And by the end of this video, I am going to tell you exactly how to own one correctly, because there is a right way, and almost nobody does it. But the 8th one is the one that is going to get me arguments, because it is the one that says, the cartridge everybody calls the best defensive round ever made is quietly the wrong tool for the exact job most of you bought it for. And I am going to prove it with numbers, not opinions. Do not skip. The order matters. Let me say one thing, then I will leave it be. Everything I have picked up behind that counter, how to buy right the first time, what is worth your money and what ain't, I put it all in one book over at buyproven.com. If you want it, it is there. That is all. Now let us get back to it. Real quick, so you know who is talking. I am Emmett Boone. I spent 11 years working warranty returns for a firearms distributor, which means my job was opening the box when somebody mailed a gun back and writing down why. These days I run projects at a custom rifle shop. I am salaried. I do not work commission. I get paid the same whether you buy something or walk out of here, and that is exactly why I can tell you the truth. And here's the filter for this one. And it is a little different than usual. Not, is it powerful? It is powerful, everybody knows that. That is not in dispute. The question is, where does that power actually go and who pays for it? Because energy does not disappear. It goes into the target, or it goes into the gun, or it goes into your ears, or it goes into the wall behind the man. It goes somewhere, every time. First, the history, quickly, because it explains everything that follows. In the early 30s, Elmer Keith was loading .38 special hotter than anybody had any business loading it, and Phil Sharp and Douglas Wesson were watching. What came out of that in 1935 was the .357 Magnum. They took the .38 special case and lengthened it 1/10 of an inch, purely so you could not chamber the hot stuff in a gun that would come apart, and they built the registered Magnum around it. But here is the part everybody forgets. The .357 Magnum was not designed as a defensive cartridge. It was designed for outdoor work, hunting, long-range revolver shooting, and going through car bodies, which is what the Bureau wanted it for. It was a field cartridge. Every design decision in it assumes open air. We took an outdoor cartridge and put it on a nightstand, and then we forgot we had done it. Everything that follows comes from that one substitution. Number 1, and it is the one nobody prepares you for, the blast. A .357 Magnum out of a 4-inch barrel puts out somewhere around 165 decibels. I want to give you a reference for that number, because decibels are a scale most people cannot feel. Permanent hearing damage from an impulse sound starts around 140. The scale is logarithmic, which means every 3 decibels is roughly double the energy. 165 is not a little louder than 140. It is enormously louder. 1 round. Outdoors, unprotected, 1 round does damage you do not get back. Now put 4 walls around it. Sound reflects. In a hallway, in a bedroom, in a stairwell, that pressure comes back at you off the drywall and off the ceiling, and it stacks. Every person I have ever talked to who fired a Magnum indoors describes the same 2 things, and neither of them is the noise. They describe the pressure in their chest, and they describe not being able to hear anything at all for a while afterward. And here is why that is not just an injury. It is a tactical problem. You are now deaf in the middle of the worst night of your life. You cannot hear where anybody is. You cannot hear your own family calling to you. You cannot hear a second person in the house. You just took away your best sensor at the exact moment you needed it most. That is what the blast actually costs, and it does not show up anywhere on the box. The next one takes away the other sensor. Number 2, the flash. Magnum powder charges are large and slow burning, and they are calibrated for a longer barrel than most people carry. Whatever does not finish burning inside the tube finishes burning outside of it, in the air, in front of your face. At a daylight range, you never see it. Your eyes are wide open and adjusted, and the sun washes it out completely. That is why almost nobody knows this about their own carry gun. At 2 in the morning, your pupils are dilated all the way. Fire one Magnum round in that condition and you get a fireball, and it is not a metaphor. It is a genuine ball of burning powder 6 to 12 inches off the muzzle. Your night vision is gone, not dimmed, gone, and it takes a real amount of time to come back, and every second of that time, you are standing in your own hallway, effectively blind, and from number 1, effectively deaf. 2 rounds fired and you have removed both of your senses. That is the thing about Magnum performance that never makes it into the review. It does not just happen downrange, it happens to you. And the shorter your barrel, the worse both of these get, which brings us straight to the next one. Number 3, the snubby lie. And this one is going to annoy some of you because it is probably the gun you own. Here is what a .357 Magnum actually needs. It needs barrel to work. A 125 grain Magnum load out of a 4-inch tube will chronograph right around 1,450 feet per second and give you something close to 580 foot-pounds. That is the number that made the cartridge famous. That is the number in every article you have ever read. Now put that same round in a 2-inch snub. You are going to lose 200, sometimes 300 feet per second. You are down into the low 1200s and under, and your energy has fallen off a cliff, and by the time you finish the arithmetic, you are not far from a good .38 special plus P load out of the same gun. But here is the ugly part. You did not lose any of the downside. The blast is worse out of a short barrel, not better, because more of that powder is burning outside the gun. The flash is worse for the same reason. The recoil in a 20-ounce snub is genuinely violent. So the man with a .357 snub loaded with Magnums has bought every single cost of the cartridge and given up most of the benefit. He is paying full price for half the product. And if you shot .38 special plus P out of that exact same gun, you would get most of the performance, a fraction of the blast, and a follow-up shot you could actually make. That is not me being contrarian. Run the numbers yourself. And the fourth one is what all that recoil does to you over time. Number 4, and this is the one I think is genuinely the most dangerous thing on this list. It builds a flinch, and the flinch does not stay put. A flinch is not cowardice, and it is not weakness. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it is supposed to do. You have taught it that pressing this trigger produces a violent, loud, bright, painful event, and after enough repetitions, it starts bracing before the shot instead of after it. That is learning. Your body is working correctly. Here is what makes it dangerous. It does not stay with the Magnum. Once you have built it, it follows you. It shows up in your .22. It shows up in your carry 9. Men come to this counter frustrated that they are throwing shots low and left with a pistol they used to shoot fine, and a good half of the time the story is the same. They bought a Magnum, they shot 100 rounds of full house through it trying to get used to it, and they poisoned the well for every gun they own. And unlearning a flinch takes 10 times the rounds that building one did. That is not a guess. That is what every instructor I know will tell you. The Magnum can make you a worse shooter with every other gun in your safe. Nobody puts that on a box. Number 5 is what it does to the gun instead of the shooter. Number 5, the cartridge eats the revolver, and there is a famous piece of proof. The Smith & Wesson Model 19 is one of the finest revolvers ever built. Bill Jordan pushed Smith to make it. They delivered in 1957, and it went on the hip of state troopers and sheriffs for 2 decades. It is a K-frame, which means it was sized for a .38, and the Magnum was put into it because that is what people wanted, and they cracked. Not all of them, and not quickly, but consistently enough that it became one of the best documented failures in American gun history. Light fast bullets, the 125 grain Magnums specifically, would erode and then split the forcing cone at the flat spot on its underside. Smith's answer was the L-frame in 1980, a heavier frame built to eat Magnums indefinitely, and that is exactly why the 6.86 exists. I saw the tail end of this from the returns desk. Cracked forcing cones, end shake, cylinders gone out of time on guns that had been fed a steady diet of full house loads. It is not common and it is not fast, but it is real, and it is the cartridge doing it. The gun is not failing. The gun is being consumed on schedule. A .38 will not do that to a revolver in your lifetime. A Magnum will, if you let it. The next one leaves the gun entirely. Number 6, where the bullet goes when it does not stop. Magnum velocity is a wonderful thing right up until the hollow point does not open, and hollow points fail. Heavy clothing packs the cavity, an intermediate object turns the bullet, the nose fills up, and it stays shut. When that happens to a fast light .357 bullet, you have a small diameter projectile moving very quickly with nothing to slow it down. Interior walls do not slow anything down. 2 sheets of drywall and some air is not a barrier, it is a suggestion. A Magnum round that misses or that passes through and keeps going is still carrying serious energy on the far side of 2 or 3 walls. And I want to say this the way I would say it to a man across the counter. In a house, the wall behind your target is not a backstop. It is a bedroom. It is your kid's bedroom or your neighbor's living room in an apartment, and the cartridge does not know the difference and does not care. That is not an argument against owning one. It is an argument for knowing your house, knowing your angles, and thinking hard about ammunition selection, and almost nobody does either. Number 7 is the one I see most often, and it is entirely self-inflicted. Number 7, the practice gap. Here is how it goes, and if this is you, I am not judging you, because it is nearly everybody. You buy a .357. You take it to the range and you fire a cylinder of Magnums and your hand hurts and your ears ring through the muffs. And you think, well, that is enough of that. So you buy .38 special for practice because it is cheaper and softer and the gun shoots it happily. And that is genuinely one of the great virtues of the platform. And then you load Magnums for carry. So now the situation is this. You have 500 rounds of trigger time with a cartridge that recoils like a firm handshake, and you are carrying a cartridge that recoils like a car door slamming, and you have fired maybe 30 of them in your life. Different recoil, different report, different flash, different sight recovery, different everything. The gun you trained with and the gun you carry are not the same gun. They just look alike. That gap is the single most common and most correctable failure I see in this whole category, and it costs almost nothing to fix, and I will tell you how in a minute. But first, number 8, and this is the one that is going to fill the comments. Number 8. For the specific job most of you bought this cartridge for, it is the wrong tool, and the evidence is what happens when you put it in a rifle. Take that exact same .357 Magnum round and fire it out of a 16 or 20-inch lever gun. Every problem on this list either shrinks or disappears. The powder finishes burning inside the barrel, so the flash mostly goes away and the blast drops substantially. The rifle weighs 6 or 7 pounds, so recoil becomes almost nothing. You get a stock on your shoulder and sights on a longer plane, so your accuracy improves dramatically. And you pick up 200 to 400 feet per second, which takes the cartridge past 1,000 foot-pounds and into genuine deer territory. Same cartridge, same box of ammunition, all of the upside and almost none of the cost. Now think about what that tells you. Every single thing that makes the .357 dangerous to the person shooting it is a symptom of putting a rifle cartridge in a handgun. That is not a flaw in the design. That is us using it wrong. It was built for open air and long barrels and outdoor work, and we put it in a 2-inch snub on a nightstand, and then we blame the recoil. I know some of you wanted me to just say, it is the greatest defensive cartridge ever made and move on. I get it, I really do. And in a 4-inch L frame with the right load, in the hands of a man who actually trains with what he carries, it genuinely might be. I am not taking that away from anybody, but strip the romance off it and the numbers only point one way. The .357 Magnum is a cartridge that punishes everyone who does not respect what it actually is, and the entire industry sells it as though respect were optional. So here is how you own one correctly, and it is 3 things. Buy enough gun, an L-frame or a GP 100 sized revolver, 4-inch barrel minimum, not a 2-inch airweight. The steel is what makes the cartridge behave, and the barrel is what makes it perform. If you want a small gun, buy a small gun in .38 and be at peace with it. You will shoot it better, and it will not cost you a thing you actually needed. Match your practice to your carry. Shoot .38 for volume. Absolutely, that is the platform's best feature. But fire at least 50 rounds of your actual carry load every year, and fire some of them fast, and fire some of them in low light if your range allows it. You need to have seen the flash before the night you need to, and go shoot it in the dark once with ears on, somewhere safe and legal. One time. It will change how you think about the gun on your nightstand more than any video I could make, including this one. Training beats gear every single time. The most important tool you own sits between your ears and your trigger finger, and the .357 Magnum is the cartridge that punishes a lack of reps harder than anything else you can buy over a counter. If I could only keep 3.357s off everything I have ever owned, it would be a 4-inch L-frame for the house, a lever carbine in the same caliber, because it is the cartridge finally getting to do what it was built for, and a small frame revolver loaded with .38s for the days the big one stays home. Not because they are flashy, because they are proven, they are right for the job, and they are the kind of thing you hand your kids someday. Buy proven, not hyped, and buy the gun you will actually go out and shoot. All right, your turn. If you keep a Magnum on the nightstand, tell me straight, have you ever fired it indoors or in the dark, and did it go the way you expected? Drop it in the comments. No judgment. And yeah, tell me if I got any of this dead wrong. I already know the snubby crowd is warming up, and I read everyone. The comment scraps are half the fun. Next time we do the other half of this. The .38 special, and why the round everybody calls obsolete is quietly the smartest thing you can put in a defensive revolver. That one is going to start a bigger fight than this one. Shoot straight, buy proven, and I will see you at the counter.